Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and this past week in data breaches was absolutely nuts. It's really good to be back doing the regular breaches segment and all of that because I've been traveling and it's been absolutely crazy, but the show must go on, and yes, we are going to be talking about Crowdstrike because I do consider that a breach. You might not think about it, but it actually kind of is, and we're going to dive into that too. So with that, thank you very much to Jay Dance, Hank Green, Jim Mays, and Sandeep Shranduvi for giving me a lot of this information. And with that, let's start with All Care Medical Management. On July 22nd, they filed a notice of data breach with California after discovering information belonging to patients of their Family Planning Associates medical group was leaked in a cybersecurity incident. Now, in this notice, All Care explained that essentially sensitive information was leaked, including names, social security, contact information, dates of birth, medical record numbers, health insurance information, and medical information as well. They are notifying those impacted. And moving on, let's go to our mini segment, basically entitled, If You Just Paid for Cybersecurity, You Wouldn't Be Getting Sued, You Wouldn't Be Getting Fined. And with that, let's start with pharmacy giant Rite Aid. Now, Rite Aid failed to protect the personal information of 2.2 million people that was exposed in a June data breach, and this is according to that proposed federal class action. Now, Margaret Bianucci alleged that the National Drugstore chain basically breached its duties under common law and Federal Trade Commission Act to safeguard sensitive data and failed to implement reasonable and adequate data security measures or to comply with industry standards. Now, information exposed from Rite Aid was names, dates of birth, driver's license numbers, and other forms of information found on government ID. So heads up, if you basically use Rite Aid for your pharmacy needs, you might want to check in. Moving on, United Health Group, and you know this one was coming. The National Community Pharmacists Association, along with more than 36 providers, filed a class action against United Health over losses stemming from the Change Healthcare data breach this past February. If you recall, roughly 1/3, I believe, of all pharmacies went out. Nobody could get prescriptions. Obviously, that could be potentially life endangering as well. That's a huge thing. Now, as previously reported, they were hit by Ffig, known as Black Hat as well, with ransomware. Now, the attack resulted in that data breach, and United Health Care Group advanced billions of dollars to providers, but organizations were still reporting widespread revenue losses from unpaid claims and operational disruptions months after the attack. So United Healthcare is probably going to lose their shirt on this one. We're going to see what happens there. Moving on. Let's talk about fast fashion company known as Shine. Now, the New York Attorney General fined Shine $1.9 million for failing to properly handle a data breach in late 2022. Now, the attackers hit Shine and stole credit card and personal information of nearly 40 million Shine customers. And so, by virtue of that, in an assurance of discontinuance issued by the Attorney General in 2022, the Attorney General of New York determined that Shine, quote unquote, made a misrepresentation, end quote, on its website. So heads up, if you're a Shine customer, I don't know if you're going to get paid, but they are certainly going to be paying the state of New York. Moving on, let's talk about Freestyle Software Inc. Now, Freestyle failed for the second time to defeat Penn LLC's breach of contract lawsuit in connection with a data breach that exposed the personal information of 236,000 customers of the online retailer, and though here we are. Now, Penn is a seller of the As Seen on TV products, interestingly enough, on their PulseTV.com website, and they accused Freestyle of causing over $30 million in business losses by exposing the financial data of its customers for over a year. Freestyle, a provider of internet shopping cart services, neglected to maintain backups or use a monitoring system to detect unauthorized access, according to the lawsuit. Obviously, not a good look for a provider, so there you go. If you shopped for As Seen on TV products on PulseTV.com, you might want to check in. And those were our basically lawsuits of the week or fines of the week. And if they had just spent on cybersecurity, they wouldn't be having their reputations ruined, and I definitely wouldn't be talking about them. Moving on. Let's talk about Employer Flexible HR Holdings, LLC. On July 17th, they filed with Massachusetts after discovering an unauthorized party was able to gain access to their My HR platform. So in that notice, Employer Flexible explained that the incident did allow an unauthorized party to access sensitive data. We're talking names, social security numbers, dates of birth, and health insurance information. They are sending notices out as well. Moving on, Arissa Health Incorporated and its subsidiaries Counseling Associates, Inc., Northeast Kansas Community Mental Health Center, Mid-South Health Systems, Ozark Guidance Center, and Professional Counseling Associates, collectively known as ERISA Health. They filed with Massachusetts after discovering unauthorized access on their network, and we're talking names, addresses, dates of birth, email addresses, social security numbers, health insurance information, medical information, and driver's license numbers. They are sending out notices as well. So if you use ERISA at all for any of your health, mental health, whatever needs, definitely check in. Moving on, let's go to the city of Columbus, Ohio, the capital of Ohio as well. And that's a beautiful Capitol building, for the record. Really good if you ever get a chance to be there. Happened to be there a couple of years ago due to a gig. Now, they experienced a data breach this past Wednesday night, followed by an internet outage as officials continue to look further into how and why this happened and who was responsible. Now, the extent of the breach is still under investigation, according to Director of Security Mike Richardson. The city said in a press release that they sent out this past Thursday that no credit card or banking information was compromised for employees or citizens. So, heads up to you. City of Columbus, hopefully you'll figure it out. Moving on, let's talk about Compex, not Complex, Compex Legal Services. They filed with California after discovering that basically they got unauthorized access into their network, and we're talking about the normals. So names, dates of birth, social security, medical diagnosis, treatment information, medical record numbers, health insurance information, and on and on. Compex Legal Services is sending out notices as well. Moving on, Human Technology, Inc. They also have a whole bunch of affiliates, including Greer Orthotics and Prosthetics, Murphy's Orthotic and Foot Care, and High Tech Prosthetics and Orthotics, collectively known as Human Technology. Now, they filed a notice of data breach with Health and Human Services for obvious reasons, because they got hit by a cyber attack. Now, they said that basically access to consumer-sensitive data included names, social security, date of birth, driver's license or state IDs, health insurance information, medical information, passport numbers, and financial account information. They are sending notices out as well. So heads up to you, Human Technology users. Pretty cool name for a company. Moving on, let's talk about Diligent Corp. And this is an interesting one because they disclosed an incident, which I'm not 100% sure what that incident is. Obviously, some kind of unauthorized access or breach, but they're saying it affected fewer than 15 of their clients or customers, and it's related to a breach of one of their subsidiaries known as Steel Compliance Solutions, and this apparently happened 2 years ago. So this was a supply chain hit. But why are we bringing this up in the past week or so? U.S. defense contractor Leidos, and for the record, they are the service provider for IT for Homeland Security, Department of Defense, and NASA, now have confirmed that internal data stolen from this third-party breach, exposed by threat actors, basically is something they're caught up in. Now, Leidos also emphasized that neither their network or customer information, aka the military secrets, were affected by this breach. Obviously, there we go. We'll see if this unfolds, but sometimes you never know how it's going to affect you or when. Moving on. Let's talk about spyware maker. Basically, they're based out of Minnesota. They are known as SpyTech. In other words, you can install SpyTech software onto a phone or computer and spy on someone. That's what it's for. Now, a person with knowledge of the breach provided TechCrunch, where I'm getting this information, with a cache of files taken directly from the company's servers containing detailed device activity logs from phones, tablets, and computers that SpyTech monitors, and with some of these dates as recent as June of this year. Now, TechCrunch verified the data as authentic in part of analyzing some of the exfiltrated device activity logs that pertain to the company's chief executive, who installed the spyware system on one of his own devices. In other words, the CEO spying on his own, himself. Maybe it's a test, who knows? Anyway, the data showed that SpyTech spyware, it's known as Real-Time Spy and also Spy Agent, among others, has been used to compromise more than 10,000 devices since basically its earliest dated leak records from 2013. We're talking Androids, Chromebooks, Macs, Windows, all that kind of stuff all over the world. So heads up, if you're spying on people using SpyTech, Real-Time Spy and Spy Agent, you might want to check in because you just got exposed yourself. Moving on. Let's talk about the Brookfield Zoo in Brookfield, Illinois, right next to Chicago. It's one of the coolest zoos ever. We've spent a good chunk of time there in my youth and even in my adulthood as well. Now, they released a statement, unfortunately, on Wednesday confirming that their network was hit earlier this year. Zoo officials say the data breach did not disrupt operations, fortunately, and information related to past and present employees, in addition to beneficiaries, may have been accessed. So, if you're a patron of the Brookfield Zoo like I am, it's a great place to go. I guess we weren't affected, and hopefully not, and I hope those employees are good too. It's really, really a nice place. Moving on, let's talk about the Donald W. Wyatt Detention Facility in scenic Rhode Island. Now, this is actually an update because this breach now has 10 times the number of victims that was originally estimated last year, according to a class action lawsuit filed basically in Rhode Island U.S. District Court. I did not put this as part of basically that the mini segment, if you will, but I thought it was an important one as well. Now, this breach occurred on November 2nd of last year. And then 4 days before Christmas, the Central Falls facility publicized that the personal data of 1,984 had been exposed. This included 1,454 detainees, 438 current and former staff, and then 92 outside vendors. But a letter from Wyatt included in the new lawsuit suggests that the total number of victims could be as high as 20,693. So if you're on lockdown at the Wyatt Detention Facility in Rhode Island or work for it in some way, shape, or form, heads up to you. And if you're in lockdown, you're probably not watching or listening to this. Moving on. Let's talk about ClickBalance. This is one of Mexico's largest ERP technology providers, according to the article I just read. Now, they kept an unprotected database containing sensitive information on hundreds of thousands of users online for anybody to view. In other words, no passwords. If you knew the link, you could go look it up. Now, this contains 769 million records. These records contain secrets and personally identifiable information. We're also talking about things like API keys. That's obviously a huge issue. Secret keys as well. Bank account numbers, tax IDs, email addresses, all this kind of stuff. The database that's been leaked is 395 gigabytes in size. So if you use ClickBalance, whether you're in Mexico or wherever you are, you definitely want to start changing your secret keys, information as much as you can, passwords, all that kind of stuff. Really not good. Moving on, let's talk about cloud-based customer relationship management software provider known as Bullhorn. Now, they're dismissing data breach claims by threat actors Wonder and Almighty 4444 that have purported to basically have stolen over 3 million records from Bullhorn this past May, which essentially is being sold on hacking forums, and here we are. Now, while the exfiltrated data was claimed to contain 2 million records of users linked to firms leveraging Bullhorn and other another million records of the companies, as well as employment-seeking individuals, I copy and pasted this from an article, and it is not good. But we're talking about, on top of all of that, employment-seeking individuals' personal details, such information was noted by Bullhorn to have been obtained from a third party that integrated with the firm, but did not impact Bullhorn themselves. So, in other words, this I think it was translated into English. Essentially, they are saying, yeah, we didn't get hit. Somebody that plugged into us got hit, so it looks like us, but it's not us. So hopefully it's not. And if you use Bullhorn, definitely keep an eye on it. Moving on. Let's head on over to Michigan Medicine. They had 57,000 patients hit due to a cyber attack on employee mailboxes, and all the normal personal health information that you can think of has been exposed as well. So heads up to you, Michigan Medicine patients. Moving on, let's talk about Futurity First Insurance Group, or FFIG, or Ffig. Ffig. Why not? Now, they filed with Maine after discovering that attackers were able to access several of their email accounts as well. Does nobody enable things like single sign-on or identity access management here? Okay, so with that, in this notice, Ffig explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access consumer-sensitive information, names, social security numbers, driver's license info, all that kind of stuff. They are sending out stuff as well. So if you use Ffig, Futurity First Insurance Group, just you know what to do at this point. A-Line Staffing Solutions, you're breaking my heart. Don't even know you. Now, they filed with Texas after discovering an unauthorized party was able to access confidential information that had been entrusted to them. We're talking about the normal name, social security, all that kind of stuff. A-Line Staffing is sending that out as well. So if you're being staffed by A-Line, definitely check in, I guess, in Texas. And finally, and we have 2 finalies for you today. I told you we'd be talking about CrowdStrike, but that's the last one that we're going to be talking about, but you shouldn't fast forward through this one because we are talking about Snowflake first. Now, since that major attack, and I've been talking about this one for a couple months now, Snowflake has contended that the accounts that were targeted were those without multi-factor authentication in place. And for the record, okay, maybe that's true, but that's why? Like why would anybody not have MFA enabled, even if it's the basic one, before you get better identity management? So here we are. Now they have a new authentication policy that enables the admins of Snowflake, meaning their customers, to enforce MFA on all users in a Snowflake tenancy. Now, this policy follows a 3-step process: prompt, enforce, and monitor. Now, the prompt phase invokes a pop-up that prompts the user to log into the interface without MFA to enable it, and then basically has guided steps for the user to enable MFA, and everything you do should have MFA on it. Now, regarding enforcement, Snowflake has enhanced its authentication policies, which now include an option requiring mandatory MFA for all users. Admins can configure this policy, determine whether it applies solely to local users or single sign-on users as well, because you should be integrating single sign-on with this. And finally, the monitoring phase basically centers on the availability of the Snowflake Trust Center, an interface where admins can manage risk posture of Snowflake's account. The Trust Center Security Essentials scanners basically monitors accounts for MFA and network policy compliance. The feature is included in all Snowflake editions and now active by default. Now, the Trust Center CIS benchmark scanner, which is essentially what we are talking about here, that package includes further tools to measure the integrity of accounts in accordance with the CIS Snowflake Foundation's benchmark, which is a series of guidelines that outline the measures for secure configuration. If you're not familiar with compliance, CIS is one of the big ones. So, with that, moving forward, Snowflake will add further features to the Trust Center to boost threat detection capabilities on its platform. And so my first question is, why wasn't all of this done right out of the gate? Why'd y'all get lazy with it? Like, multi-factor authentication enforcement should be a default thing right out of the gate. It's not Facebook. You know, the Facebooks of the world will never do that. The Netflixes of the world will never do that because they want you to sign up and start using their stuff as fast as humanly possible. But a major cloud provider that is going to be run by an IT department or a cybersecurity department, this is something that right out of the gate they should have done. This is also a shared responsibility. And for those companies that did get breached, like think Ticketmaster and AutoZone and a whole bunch of big companies, why weren't you doing this? I don't know, but you should be doing it. And if you don't have an identity access management solution in your life, you should get one in business, and 2, you should enable it as fast as humanly possible. And if you don't have it, just enable the free MFA until you do. Super, super important. And finally, now let's talk about CrowdStrike. And yes, this was a data breach of sorts, and hear me out here, because no, if you're looking at it, they sent out a bad update for all intents and purposes. You know, we're going to see what the official report is. We don't know if they were hit, et cetera, but it looks like they sent out a bad update that blue screened the world, and we all had either a very frustrating weekend or a pretty good laugh, or both, depending on your level of humor through this whole thing. Lord knows I was posting memes left and right as I was stranded at O'Hare Airport for hours and hours and hours, while American Airlines, Delta, which took forever to get done, and United all came back online. So with that, let's talk about why this is a data breach. And the reason why this is a data breach is that this essentially exposed the security stack, or at least part of the security stack, for the corporations that are running CrowdStrike. In other words, think about it this way. Assume there's a known gap or flaw in CrowdStrike's coverage via its Falcon platform. You install it and it's got some kind of gap, whatever it is. If that's known, that is something that an attacker can exploit. And so by virtue of that, the data that was exposed wasn't personally identifiable information or health information or anything like that. What it was essentially an exposure of how a company is defending themselves at a very core level at their endpoints. And so by virtue of that, you start to build, as an attacker, a roadmap into essentially that business or organization or whatever you want to hit. And now you know they're running CrowdStrike, so now you know how to tune your attack to, let's say, evade CrowdStrike in some way, shape, or form. And it is possible to do that. And so by virtue of that, that is the consideration that we're talking about here. Now, so for example, as a cybersecurity consultant, my actual day job, because Lord knows YouTube isn't paying me, for these breaches videos, we don't publish essentially in our company what we recommend. We also don't list out anywhere publicly who our clients are, and that is for essentially their protection and our protection as well. If the attacker knows the firewall we're recommending or the EDR or encryption or whatever it is, then they're building a roadmap into there. And if they go to our website and say, oh yes, here's all the brands that we work with, or here's the companies that we consult with, or whatever it is, well, now you know the products that I'm leveraging, and odds are my clients are going to be drinking that Kool-Aid, and now they're leveraging it too. And that's exactly what just happened to the American airlines and massive corporations and governments of the world. Now we know who is running what due to all of the massive outages, banks included, which means now we've got an issue in terms of potentially developing workarounds, the attackers developing workarounds to get through the CrowdStrike infrastructure that is everywhere in these large organizations. That's why it's a data breach. That's why it's an issue. And so, yes, it is a data breach, and I'm going to stick to my guns on that one. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.